He tried to portray himself as Mr. Middle Class, a successful small businessman, proud father, and loving and devoted husband. But the real Gerard Baden-Clay was the complete opposite. He was an incompetent real estate agent, intolerant of his 3 young daughters, and a womaniser who wasn't even faithful to his long-term mistress. But why Gerard Baden-Clay thought all his problems could be fixed by killing his beautiful wife Allison, only he knows. So far, he's not saying, but after being convicted of murder this past week, he now has a lifetime in prison to think about it. Let's be upfront from the start. Tony McHugh is not the first person to fall in love and have a relationship, an affair if you prefer, with a married man, and she won't be the last. But leaving her own partner and children to be involved with Gerard Baden-Clay for 4 years is the worst mistake she's ever made. Forevermore she'll be known as the other woman and inexorably linked to the murder of Allison Baden-Clay. It is fair to describe you as the mistress, isn't it?
That's how, yes it is. But I believed that I wasn't that person for Gerard.
What did you believe you were?
I believed that I was in a loving, caring relationship that did have a future.
Even though he was a married man?
Yes, even though he was a married man.
How much did you love him, or how much do you love him?
I loved him very much.
And do you still love him?
I don't like to use that word unconditional anymore, but I did love him unconditionally. And I was very forgiving, too forgiving.
Tony McHugh believed her love affair with Gerard Baden-Clay was going to have a happy ending. How wrong she was. Now, having been the key prosecution witness at Baden-Clay's murder trial and having had every intimate detail of her personal life exposed in court, she wants to explain her side of this terrible story to the rest of the country.
I am still in disbelief. To a degree.
Why do you think he murdered her?
I'll never understand how it could have happened. I don't believe that he murdered her for me. Why I say he did not kill her to be with me was that I loved him already. He didn't need to. He already had me.
So if he wasn't killing for love, what was he killing for?
He killed for himself.
To everyone, the Baden-Clays were a happy family from Brisbane's middle-class western suburbs. Gerard and Allison met and fell in love at work, married in 1997 and had 3 beautiful daughters. Life seemed harmonious and normal.
Scouting is a global organisation which has its core fundamental in doing unto others as you'd have done unto you and leaving the world a better place than you found it.
Gerard's claim to fame was as a great-grandson of Lord Baden-Powell, the founder of the Scouting movement.
Thank you.
And as this promotional video from a few years ago shows, he clearly enjoyed the prestige that attracted.
In fact, that's one of my favourite Scout laws, is the Scout is courageous, to have courage in the face of adversity, to make those decisions that need to be made, and that ability to move on with life and know that you have that self-confidence to know that everything's going to be all right.
Away from the Honourable Scouts, he was a real estate agent, where again Gerard Baden-Clay's self-confidence and desire to be the centre of attention was constantly on display. Allison, meanwhile, got on with being a wife, mother and loyal friend,
Yeah.
as Helen Wilson and Nicole Morrison know all too well. What sort of a mum was Allison?
She was a gorgeous, beautiful, caring mum. Absolutely lived to be a mother. She adored her girls. Yeah. Yeah.
What about her sense of fun? Did she have a sense of fun?
Oh yeah, yeah. She was a ball of fun.
She had the best laugh because, and I'm really grateful. When I really stop to think about her, I can still hear her laugh, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah.
And she laughed so freely, and she laughed often, and she laughed at herself all the time.
Can you believe she's gone?
No, it's Of course we believe it because it's real, but yeah, for sure. You know, we don't want to believe it. Yeah.
In 2008, Gerard Baden-Clay met Toni McHugh. She was a client of his and soon after, an employee at his real estate office. How did the affair start?
I admired him as a person. I really, I believed in his integrity, and I guess there was an attraction.
Did you attempt to fight it, considering that he was married?
Yeah. I think I was attracted to him probably before, I don't know, maybe before it dawned on him. So yes, I had.
At the time, Toni's 17-year relationship with the father of her children was crumbling. Gerard provided support and told her similar things about his own marriage to Allison.
And that's what he was telling me, that he was in a marriage that wasn't a loving marriage, that he was only there for the children, for the girls.
What did you think your future was with Gerard Baden-Clay?
I just thought it'd be a normal future. I thought it'd be two people that loved each other.
Did you think that you'd get married one day?
He had told me that he would marry me one day.
And you wanted that? You wanted to be Mrs. Baden-Clay?
I did.
What did you think of Gerard and Allison's marriage?
Allison did love him, and obviously we would support anything Al chose to do. Yeah.
We felt that she was too good for him back in the really early days, and she was, but she was in love.
Love is blind. Yeah.
Why didn't you like Gerard? What was it about him?
We never liked him from the outset because he was never authentic, he was never genuine, and he was always superior. He always thought he was superior.
Unlike the courageous scout he pretended to be, Gerard was a coward when it came to his relationships with women. For 3 to 4 years, he'd been telling Toni he was going to leave Allison to be with her, but he never did. Then, in October 2011, Allison found out about the affair, and in an instant, Toni was dumped and fired.
He basically just said to me, "I need to see you. She knows." And I knew what my fate would be, really.
So your fate was end of affair and end of job?
Yes.
But barely 2 months later, Gerard was back in touch and up to his old tricks.
We met at a coffee shop. He sat opposite me, held my hand, came into that meeting without his wedding ring on. And he said to me, "I need you to know that I love you and that I am going to be leaving my wife."
Coming up, despite the lies, Allison remains loyal. Did Allison ever consider leaving Gerard?
No, she was always going to fix it.
And the phone call the jury never heard.
He said, "I'm looking for someone to kill my wife."
That's next on 60 Minutes. In 1997, Gerard Baden-Clay married beauty queen Allison Dickey. And for a while, life was perfect. They started a family and had 3 precious daughters. But Gerard also started to stray. Only he knows how many affairs he had. But in 2008, Gerard met and fell in love with Tony McHugh. Then, barely a year later, a bizarre incident which police now believe was an ominous warning that Allison's life was in great danger. Melissa Romano is mighty thankful she never met Gerard Baden-Clay in person. But back in 2009, they had multiple phone conversations about a real estate deal on the Gold Coast. However, it's what happened after their business finished that frightens Melissa.
He built rapport very quickly, and on one of the instances he said, maybe you should come and work for me. I said that I was very loyal to who I was working with, and he said, and his words were, "Well, if you're not interested in doing that, then I've got another job for you to do." And I said, "Oh, and what is that?" And he said, "Well, I'm looking for someone to kill my wife."
When you heard those words, what did you do? How did you react?
I think I kind of held my breath. I was waiting for the part that would make it make sense, but it didn't make sense. So he was very serious. And then I said, "Oh, why would you want to kill your wife?" And he didn't proceed anymore on it. He changed the subject.
With hindsight, it's easy to say Melissa should have reported that phone conversation to police. But in reality, even if she had, there was very little they could do. And of course, only Gerard Baden-Clay could predict what would happen 3 years later, in April 2012.
For us, I think, Robert, the key thing...
By then, there weren't enough hours in the day for Gerard to keep up with his own convoluted double life. His real estate business was floundering and he owed $1 million, much of it to friends. And while he claimed a newfound commitment to his wife, he was far from devoted, which distressed Allison's friends Helen and Nicole.
I didn't like the way he treated her, and he was emotionally very, very cruel.
What would he do?
Well, he had told her that he didn't love her. I don't know how you actually really recover from that.
Every day there was cruel things being said about what a horrible dinner you've cooked, how lazy, she is to not have cleaned the house, or just degrading, awful comments.
Did Allison ever consider leaving Gerard?
No. That was never an option for Al, never an option. She was always going to fix it, and it was always going to get better.
But what Allison didn't know was Gerard had renewed his affair with Tony McHugh, just 2 months after promising Allison it was over for good.
That affair had been going for a number of years.
Superintendent Mark Ainsworth headed the investigation into Allison's murder. There was also much evidence of Gerard's affair with Tony.
The promises that he'd made McHugh that he was going to be with her after the 1st of July. An email back from Gerard only a matter of days before Allison's disappearance, telling McHugh that he loved her on 3 occasions in that one email, with the final sentence, "Leave it to me now." What did that mean? He, in our view, was at the stage of separating from Allison and starting a new life with Tony McHugh.
Clearly, the 19th of April 2012 is the most significant date in this tragedy. The events that led to Allison's death that night most likely started with an innocuous phone call. Tony was driving home when she and Gerard had one of their regular phone chats. But it quickly became heated when Gerard revealed Tony and Allison would come face to face at a real estate conference the next day. Up until this point, he hadn't bothered to tell either of them. That total disregard made a furious Tony question their relationship. But Gerard once again swore his love for her and repeated his promise to leave Allison. This would be the last day Allison was seen alive. So on the 19th then, what were you asking him about the future of your relationship? What were you seeking to know, and what did he tell you?
He was telling me that, that he most certainly didn't love his wife and that he still intended to leave his wife. But on that night, I said, I'm not convinced. I don't know what you are doing to ensure that we have a relationship.
So did you give him an ultimatum of any sort?
I said to him, you have to talk to me about how things are going to change. And he said, things are changing.
Do you feel that the pressure you're putting on Gerard to leave his wife, to follow through on his promise to you, could that have pressured him in any way to murder Allison?
I wouldn't have, no. My pressure has, no. I've been patient with the man for years and years, and I was probably pressuring myself, if anything, and questioning my own intentions, feeling like I just can't be going down this road again.
Gerard Baden-Clay's version of events of the night is that after the kids were put to bed, Allison started quizzing him about his affair because their marriage counsellor had suggested this was a good way to clear the air.
I'm going to go to bed. You coming?
But Gerard says after a while he'd had enough and went to sleep. He claims when he woke the next morning, Allison was gone. At 7:15, a calm Baden-Clay called 000.
Police emergency, what's your location?
Good morning, Brookfield.
Brookfield is the semi-rural outer Brisbane suburb where they lived.
My wife isn't home. I don't know where she is.
Coming up, Allison's friends immediately suspect Gerard.
I felt from the start he had done something to Al. I really knew it.
And the police move in.
I knew that they weren't shaving scratches.
That's next on 60 Minutes. Gerard Baden-Clay is a man who'll spin any yarn to get out of trouble. His life is a web of lies. And after murdering Allison in cold blood, true to form, he lied to police. But even the master deceiver himself would have a hard time explaining those scratches on his face.
My wife isn't home. I don't know where she is.
After Gerard Baden-Clay made this call on the 20th of April 2012 to report his wife missing, the 000 operator arranged for police to go to their home. And when the first officer saw Gerard, he immediately called in his superior, Sergeant Andrew Jackson.
The officer that arrived at the scene said that the person on the scene had large scratches to his face. Officer said that Baden-Clay had told him that he'd done it shaving, and the officer had said to me that it didn't look like shaving scratches.
And when you saw those scratches, what did you think?
I knew that they weren't shaving scratches. I think most men who've shaved for 20 plus years know what a shaving scratch looks like, and they were definitely fingernail scratches.
Sergeant Jackson was immediately suspicious, but it wasn't just the scratches on Gerard's face.
It did look like someone had made an attempt to clean the house up before we had arrived, and we did discuss that.
Did that make sense to you, if you're worried about your missing wife? Did it make sense that the house would be so tidy?
If my wife went missing, it's the last thing you'd be thinking of is to clean the house, make the bed.
Could you just state your full name for me?
Gerard Baden-Clay.
Andrew Jackson acted quickly and decisively, not only recording his conversation with Baden-Clay,
I don't want anyone leaving at this stage. Okay.
but also declaring the house a crime scene and calling in the help of every available police officer in the area. At one stage, more than 80 of them to get a search going. What was your gut instinct telling you?
Look, my gut instinct said there was something wrong. We initially thought it was probably domestic violence. To what extent, we didn't know.
Was he agitated at all?
He wasn't agitated, he was just very difficult to get answers out of.
From the moment police arrived here at the Baden-Clay home, Gerard's story just didn't ring true. But even as the search intensified for his wife, he stuck with it, as ridiculous as it was, trying to convince everyone he was the unluckiest man alive when it came to explaining away his physical injuries. Of course, there was the shaving accident with the blunt razors which had torn his cheek apart, but just the day before, this accident-prone man claimed he'd cut his hand changing a light bulb and that he'd been attacked by a caterpillar which had somehow left red scratch marks on his chest.
As part of this investigation, we had the entomologist that gave expert evidence in relation to caterpillars in that particular area.
What, that there were no caterpillars that could do that?
Exactly.
As Baden-Clay's story was unravelling, Superintendent Mark Ainsworth's team quickly identified more strange behaviour. Before he made the call to police to report his wife missing, Baden-Clay chose to Google very specific and suspicious legal definitions.
You've got a man perceiving to all and sundry that he was very concerned about where Allison was, and he's doing a check on the right to silence. Does that ring true to anyone? Would a normal person do that in those circumstances? I suggest the answer would be no.
The day we got the phone call that she was missing, we knew something really bad had gone wrong.
Why did you jump to that conclusion immediately, that something had happened, and what did you think had happened?
I felt from the start he had done something to Al. I really knew it.
The fact that he could possibly do it was incomprehensible, but definitely, straight up, we knew he was capable of something like that.
If you were convinced that Gerard had done something to Allison right in those very early days, did you ever confront him? Did you ask him?
No.
We didn't want to see that creature.
The woman you know, is there any way she committed suicide?
Absolutely not. She was never, ever, ever going to leave her girls.
No.
What was your reaction when you heard Allison was missing?
Oh, devastated, absolutely. Concerned. I didn't dislike Allison. I never ever wanted harm or... I know, I didn't intentionally go out to hurt Allison or her family. I honestly believed it was going to be handled so much just properly, you know.
It's not a good idea for us to talk. We shouldn't talk for a while, and we should lay low.
On the day Allison was reported missing, Gerard told his mistress he was being investigated by police. But it was their phone call the night before that really concerned Tony, who feared it had led to Gerard and Allison arguing.
Was there anything you can think of that triggered it?
No.
Because I don't want to be made feel guilty for this.
At that moment, did you think that Gerard might be involved in some way?
No. No.
So what did you think might have happened to her?
that she had run off, you know.
And there wasn't any part of you that was pleased about that? That maybe that this might mean you had a life with Gerard?
No, absolutely not. Oh, absolutely not. My first response was, "Did you argue?" He said no. I felt terrible. I felt that there could have been a repercussion.
Do you still feel that?
I guess I do. What if we hadn't have had that conversation?
Coming up, the desperate search to find Allison.
It kept ringing, and then I heard her voice for the first time.
Inside the forensic investigation.
He had found a stain with drips down to the floor of the vehicle.
And the police questioned Tony. Do you think Tony McHugh had anything to do with Allison's murder? That's next on 60 Minutes. The disappearance of Allison Baden-Clay touched all of Australia, and for 11 excruciating days we all hoped she'd be found alive. Of course, we now know her husband, Gerard, murdered her sometime during the evening of the 19th of April 2012, and then dumped her body on the bank of Colo Creek, southwest of Brisbane. Despite mounting evidence he was responsible, Gerard pretended to be a grieving husband, but police weren't fooled by his crocodile tears. Their investigation was focusing on just one man.
We really trust that the police are doing everything they can to find my wife, and we just hope that she'll come home soon.
The police were doing everything they could to find Allison, but Gerard Baden-Clay wasn't. He didn't help in the search at all. And you must have looked at this terrain and gone, great job, this one. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which made Inspector Mark Sharky Lang and his team extremely suspicious and angry. How would you describe that behaviour?
Bizarre. I cannot believe that somebody who loves their wife so much and wants her safe return wasn't here.
We could well do with more coppers like Sharky Lang, a 32-year veteran whose dedication meant he organised one of the most thorough searches for a missing person in Queensland's history.
She was well loved in this community, and it just galvanised a community to come together to search for her. I've never experienced that before, and I don't think I'll ever experience it again.
The search area was large, the terrain difficult. Police were also looking for Allison's phone, in the hope it was with her. It was Sharky's job to call it, but he only ever got her message bank.
It kept ringing, and then I heard her voice for the first time, and it was just Allison saying who she was, and she couldn't take the call, and she would get back to us.
To hear the voice of this woman, I'd imagine, she would feel so close. You're hearing her voice, and yet you can't find her. I mean, what's that feeling like?
Can we stop?
Stretched on. Did you believe you were searching for a person, or did you think you were searching for a body?
No, I always felt that I was searching for Allison alive.
While Sharky was continuing to search for Allison, Gerard was continuing to call Tony McHugh.
The police are going to want to speak to you. They know all about us and the affair.
But taking measures not to be discovered by using a payphone.
They think there's something may have happened to Allison, that she may have met with foul play.
I did receive a phone call during police interview where I was asked, "Can you talk?" And I said, "Well, no, not really."
So you got a phone call from him while you were being interviewed by police?
Correct.
What did he want to know?
He wanted to know whether I'd told police whether we were currently seeing each other. I said, "Well, yes, I have. Yes. I have told them, because that's the truth."
Because, of course, he's now saying that you guys were talking, but in his mind there was no relationship.
Well, I knew in his mind there was definitely a relationship, but what he'd obviously conveyed to police was that he'd had an affair and wasn't at the moment. Everything was fine in the marriage at that time.
And was that the truth?
No.
Do you think Tony McHugh had anything to do with Allison's murder?
No, I don't.
And what do you think of Gerard Baden-Clay almost suggesting on the stand that perhaps she might have?
Gerard has suggested a lot of way-out theories on the stand. All those theories and stories he's put there are for one particular reason, and that's to protect himself.
At the time, the biggest protection Gerard relied on was the lack of a body. But on the 30th of April 2012, on the 11th day of her disappearance, the search was over. Allison's badly decomposed body was found by a canoeist at Colo Creek, about 13 kilometres from her home. It was the worst day for Sharky, who had to tell Allison's mum and dad, Priscilla and Jeff Dickey.
It was the hardest call. Sorry.
It's okay, it's okay.
It was the hardest call I ever made in my life, and ever will, I think.
For someone with your experience, why was that so difficult?
She was the girl next door. She was everybody's daughter, sister, mother.
Hundreds of cars cross the bridge at Colo Creek every day, but underneath it's a lonely and sad final resting spot.
And of course this is in the dark of the night. In the middle of the night he brings her body here.
That's right.
Even in daylight, it's a difficult walk. But Mark Ainsworth thinks Baden-Clay chose this place to dump Allison in the hope she would be washed away when the tide rose in the creek. Again, he got it wrong.
On that day that her body was found, you were asked if Gerard Baden-Clay was a suspect, and you said you couldn't comment. Was he a suspect then?
He was a person we were looking at from day one.
The discovery of Allison's body gave investigators more vital clues, including, most importantly, Gerard's reaction to the terrible news. Even before she was formally identified through dental records, he was making calls to claim his wife's life insurance policies.
From our investigations, he owed in the vicinity of $1 million. The life insurance policy that Allison had out, again, was in the vicinity of $1 million. So taking the policy, claiming the money for the policy, would certainly erase most of his debts that he had attracted over a period of time.
But how did he think he'd get away with it?
I think that's the arrogance of the man, of the person. He lived a life of deception, and it was all about Gerard.
Gerard can dispute it as much as he likes, but police believe the scratch marks Allison left on Gerard tell the real story, that she fought for her life as he most likely smothered her. How terrifying do you think those last moments were for Allison?
I can only imagine they would have been extremely terrifying. You only got to look at the scratches on the side of his face.
Do you ever let your mind think about the events of that night? I mean, what actually happened between them?
No, yeah. How did things become so explosive that, yeah, Allison's lost her life?
What images do you have through your mind?
A woman that's struggling. Yeah. Fighting.
The fact that Allison had left him physically marked like that meant what to you?
She was fighting for her life, yeah. And I'm sort of, it sounds weird, but I'm really proud of her because she fought to the end, and that is not her. I mean, she is so gentle and soft and, you know, just so beautiful. But for her, she was literally fighting for her life. And I would sit there during the trial and I would sort of feel so grateful to her that she had done that. And I would look at him in the trial thinking, you know, he would be hating that. It was like, you know, she did what she had to do, yeah.
Coming up, cracking the case.
The material was examined under a microscope.
How crucial was that?
In my view, that put the icing on the cake.
And the night of the murder. Who was looking after the children?
I believe that there was a level of premeditation.
So it was planned.
My view is yes.
And life after murder. Do you believe that he did kill Allison? Next on 60 Minutes. After Allison Baden-Clay's body was found, everyone expected a speedy conclusion to the case and an imminent arrest. Everything pointed at her husband, Gerard Baden-Clay, being the murderer. But as strong as the case was, it remained circumstantial. So police ignored mounting public expectation to deliberately and methodically carry out their investigation. They also had some great luck in the form of a world expert botanist who just happened to live in the Brisbane area. Dr. Gordon Guymer runs the Queensland Herbarium in Brisbane. What he can't tell you about plants isn't worth knowing.
The material was examined under a microscope, of course, and then I identified it, comparing it with known samples here in the collection.
When police found Allison's body, they also found leaves knotted in her hair. They sent them to Dr. Guymer to work out what they were and where they came from. He established there were 6 different types of plants. He could only find 2 of the species at Colo Creek, but all 6 in the Baden-Clay backyard. To find the 6 species at Allison's home, how important is that in determining where she died?
The fact that we've got 6 species in her hair and those 6 species are at her home is significant, no doubt. And the fact is that where her body was found, we only have 2 of those 6.
This particular node shows the rear patio area.
And this is where the leaf matter was found. Putting the pieces together, police believe after he killed her, Baden-Clay dragged Allison across the back patio before lifting her into the car.
Dr. Guymer was able to largely match all the botanical material from Allison's hair with the botanical matter which was in this leaf litter in this area here.
How crucial was that to cracking the case in terms of where Allison was murdered?
In my view, that put the icing on the cake, and the work that Gordon Guymer did in getting that evidence was sensational.
After a 2-month investigation, on the 13th of June 2012, police arrested 41-year-old Gerard Robert Baden-Clay and charged him with the murder of his 43-year-old wife, Allison. Do you have any doubt that you've got the right man?
No doubt whatsoever. And as a supervisor and a manager, I couldn't have been blessed with a better team. The commitment of all those people was second to none, and the result that we've achieved has been outstanding.
If you look at his behaviour leading up to Allison's disappearance, what does that tell you about how premeditated her murder was?
I believe that there was a level of premeditation.
So it was planned?
My view is yes.
But Baden-Clay told the court he couldn't have murdered and then dumped his wife's body because he would never leave his 3 daughters alone in the house in the middle of the night. His conviction now raises the question, who was looking after the girls while Gerard was at Colo Creek? Or was it all just another lie?
I formed the clear view that Gerard Baden-Clay is a person I wouldn't trust to take my dog for a walk.
At the trial, Allison's diaries were used as evidence and revealed she suffered plenty of heartache. But despite Gerard's affair with Tony, it's obvious she continued to love him and was desperate for him to love her.
When you look at those diary notes and you read the despair she felt, do you feel a responsibility for how sad she was and lonely she was?
Yes, yes. I accept that I was part of. But what I also know is that if it wasn't me, it would have been someone else. He would have had affairs with other women.
The court was told Gerard did have affairs with other women, even cheating on his mistress. But Baden-Clay claimed he had no reason to leave his marriage because all the affairs, even the much longer 4-year relationship with Tony, were meaningless.
What was it like for you to give evidence in court?
It was very hard, and it was hard having to sit opposite him and have him staring at me constantly, very coldly. Without feeling.
During his trial, Baden-Clay did the unexpected, finally taking to the stand to tell his side of the story, and it was implausible. His main defence seemed to be, trust me, I'm a liar. Almost everything I said before was a fabrication, but now I'm telling the truth. Like the police in those early days, the jury just didn't buy it.
How much contempt do you have for this man?
I think he's probably one of the lowest forms of life you could ever meet. He's got a lot to answer to his children for as they grow up.
Do you believe that he did kill Allison?
Do I believe that he did kill Allison?
Do you think he's innocent?
No. No, I don't.
Do you believe that there's any link between your love affair and the death of Allison? And that's the question, isn't it?
It's hard to accept for me. I don't believe so. The point that I want to make is that my affair with Gerard is one aspect. What this has done to my life really should be seen to be as insignificant compared to Allison, who's lost her life.
What do you think should happen to him now?
I want this man to never, ever, ever enter my life ever again. there is a part of me that is genuinely fearful that I have been involved with a man that is not who he says he is. And that worries me. It terrifies me.
For the rest of his life, Gerard Baden-Clay will live with the consequences of the death of his wife, Allison, the woman he murdered. But far more tragically, so will their 3 young daughters, who've now lost both their mother and their father.
This was the last photo we had with her. And
Allison's friends, Helen and Nicole, will do all they can to share with her daughters their memory of a vital and loving woman. How will you remember Allison to her daughters?
She was remarkable, and her daughters, they got her for such a small amount of time, but they were lucky they had her for the time that they had.
Will they ever be able to doubt that their mum loved them?
Never.
No.
Never.
No.
No, she was extraordinary.
They must miss her like crazy.
Yeah, of course.
They've lost their mum, but they've lost their dad as well.
Yeah.
And it's not a normal, there's nothing normal about this. And I don't understand it as an adult. And I don't know how they would understand it. You know, I feel guilty so many times because my grief as a friend is enormous. And I feel guilty because my grief is a drop in the ocean compared to theirs.
Yeah.
And I can't process it.
Yeah.
So how can they?
No.
Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.